Hello and welcome back to MechVision. Farming equipment's come a long way in terms of safety, comfort, and functionality, but it wasn't always that way. There was a time when certain tractor features were considered dangerous and they're quite common on farms. Over the years, advancements in tech, safety, regulations, and practical experiences led to phasing out of these hazardous designs. In this article, we'll uncover 10 tractor features that were brilliant but eventually too perilous to continue. We'll explore how these features worked, why they eventually disappeared, and more. Let's take a deep dive. At the beginning of the 20th century, tractors lacked the electric starters we rely on today. Instead, many of these machines used large exposed flywheels. The process of starting the engine with a hand crank was simple. You manually turned the crankshaft until the engine started. This made sense at the time when battery systems were in their infancy, but it was also dangerous. If the engine misfired, the hand crank could jerk, causing severe injury. The crank could wrench a person's arm, fracture bones, or more. Accounts from the University of Nebraska's Tractor Test Lab documented numerous instances of injuries resulting from hand cranks, especially among novices. The Fordson Model F, produced between 17 and 28, were known for many starting hazards, with many inexperienced drivers getting injured when the engine kicked back. Despite the risks, many farmers continued using hand cranks because owning a tractor was a huge step forward. As battery tech improved and electric starters became reliable, the safety of using a hand crank was called into question. By the 30s, electric starters had become standard, rendering cranks obsolete. This shift significantly reduced injuries from starting tractors, and the agricultural community heaved a collective sigh of relief. 9. Tricycle front ends. In the 30s and 40s, the tricycle front end became a hallmark for tractors, especially those used for crop rowing. This design featured two narrow front wheels placed closely together under the engine. Manufacturers like Farmall popularized this style due to excellent maneuverability, especially in tight spaces. However, despite its practical advantages, the tricycle front end was unstable, especially on uneven terrain. These tractors were highly prone to rollovers, which could occur if a front wheel dipped. This narrow front end made them more likely to tip over, and once a tractor began to roll, it was almost impossible for a driver to jump clear. The National Safety Council documented numerous instances of this, and the Farmall Model H and Model M series, two of the most popular tractors at the time, sold hundreds of thousands of units, but their designs were inherently flawed. As farmers and manufacturers recognized the danger, they began to favor broader front ends and added ballast to improve stability. By the 60s, tractors with wider front axles were becoming more common, and the tricycle front end gradually fell out of favor. 8. Steel lug wheels. Before the advent of rubber, many tractors had steel wheels that had metal lugs or cleats. These wheels were particularly popular, especially on models like the Fordson Model F. The theory behind the steel lug wheels was that they provided superior traction in soft, muddy soil by digging in the ground. First, the ride on steel lug wheels was harsh. The rigid steel wheels created a bone-rattling experience, especially when driving on hard surface. But the most significant hazard was that the lugs acted like blades. Anyone who happened to be in the path of a moving tractor could be injured or killed if caught. Reports from the 20s and 30s document instances where farm workers were injured after losing their footing near a moving tractor. Additionally, steel lug wheels created dangerous driving conditions on paved roads, as they lacked the flexibility to conform to uneven surfaces. In some states, tractors with steel lugs were banned from highways. As rubber tire tech advanced in the 30s, it became clear that pneumatic tires provided better traction, smoother rides, and more. Manufacturers like Firestone aggressively marketed rubber tires, highlighting their cushioning effect and improved road performance. By the late 30s, rubber tires were becoming the standard, and steel lug wheels gradually faded. 7. Unshielded power takeoff shafts. One of the most significant innovations in tractor tech was the power takeoff shaft, introduced to transfer energy power to various implements like mowers, balers, and augers. However, early PTO systems, particularly in the 30s, lacked protective shielding around the rotating shaft. This was a major safety risk. Accident reports from the mid-20th centuries are filled with horrifying accounts of people losing limbs or suffering injuries after getting caught in unguarded PTOs. Many tractor models during this time, including some made by John Deere and Allis-Chalmers, did not even come with shields around the PTO shaft. Some farmers even removed the PTO guards for convenience. It wasn't until the 40s and 50s that PTO guards began to be offered as optional features, and by the 60s, regulations were introduced to make PTO shields standard on new tractors. The safety campaign around PTOs was crucial in preventing life-changing injuries and fatalities. Today, nearly all modern tractors feature fully enclosed PTO shafts with explicit warnings. 6. Lack of rollover protection. Rollovers remain a leading cause of farm fatalities, and for many years, tractors were developed without any rollover protection. This assumption was that if it tipped over, the operator could simply jump clear. However, this proved to be dangerous. When a tractor rolled, it happened quickly and little time to react. In the early and mid-1900s, manufacturers like John Deere and International Harvester did not include rollover protection, mainly because the tech wasn't quite there yet, and many consumers weren't willing to pay extra. By the 60s, safety experts began pushing for mandatory ROPS on all new tractors after observing a significant rise in incidents. And the 1970s, many countries introduced regulations requiring ROPS to be installed on new tractors. Older models were retrofitted with ROPS, though this was not always done due to cost and effort. ROPS, which consists of a sturdy frame with 4 posts that protect the operator in the event of a rollover, paired with seatbelts, ROPS dramatically reduced the chances of being pinned beneath an overturned tractor. Over time, ROPS became a standard feature on all new tractors. The introduction of ROPS is one of the most significant milestones in tractor safety. 5. Poorly positioned exhausts and fumes. In the early days of tractor design, exhaust systems were often positioned in risky locations, including directly in front of the operator or beneath the seat. Models like the John Deere Model B or the Farmall FS series often routed exhaust gases right where the operator would be breathing in. Not only was this unpleasant, but it was also dangerous. Prolonged exposure to exhaust fumes, especially in poorly ventilated areas, could lead to dizziness, headaches, and even more issues. Carbon monoxide is a colorless, odorless gas that can be fatal if inhaled in large quantities. In addition to the health risks, the early exhaust system posed fire hazards. Sparks from the exhaust could cause fires, and as awareness grew about the dangers of exhaust fumes, tractor manufacturers repositioned the exhaust systems to direct gases away from the operator. By the 50s, many new tractors featured vertical exhaust stacks that improved safety and comfort. The introduction of these safer exhaust designs helped reduce health risk and fire hazards on farms. Today's modern tractors also include advanced exhaust systems. 4. Exposed belt pulley drives. In the mid-20th century, many tractors came equipped with belt pulley drive systems used to power stationary equipment. These systems were extremely helpful as they allowed farmers to power equipment without electricity. However, the belt pulleys were often unguarded, which made them dangerous. Loose clothing or a careless hand or a momentary lapse in attention could lead to severe injuries. If a belt snapped under tension, it could whip around violently, causing injury or death. During the post-war years, safety advocates pushed for protective guards to be installed around the belt pulley systems, but many farmers continued to operate without these safeguards due to convenience. 3. Minimal operator platforms and no seat restraints. In the early days of tractor design, many tractors had minimal operator platforms, with no seat restraints or protective enclosures. Operators often had to perch on a simple metal seat located above the transmission, with very little protection. With no footrest or proper platforms, operating these tractors could be extremely dangerous, especially when driving over rough terrain. In some cases, operators were thrown off their seats and risked injury if the tractor's rear wheel or attached implement ran them over. Furthermore, there was a lack of rollover protection, making such incidents even more dangerous. By the mid-20th century, tractor manufacturers began recognizing the need for safer, more comfortable operator stations. Larger footboards and raised platforms were introduced, and seat belts were added to prevent operators from being ejected. By the 70s and 80s, many manufacturers and tractors were equipped with fully enclosed cabs that offered protection from the weather and drastically reduced ejection. 2. Dangerous steering mechanisms. Before the widespread adoption of power steering, many tractors had steering mechanisms that were difficult to control. Early steering systems used a basic gearbox and linkage to connect the steering wheel to the front axle. However, when the front wheels encountered obstacles like rocks or tree roots, the steering wheel could jerk violently, causing the operator to lose control. This made tractors particularly dangerous when driven on uneven ground, and the lack of hydraulic assistance made steering difficult. Many of the more powerful tractors in the 1940s and 50s lacked the power steering systems that we consider standard. This made them harder to maneuver and more tiring to operate for long hours. The introduction of power steering systems in the 60s was a significant milestone in making tractors safer and easier to operate. Power steering allows for greater control and reduces the physical strain of steering, particularly when navigating through rough fields. This change also contributed to fewer accidents, as operators were less likely to lose control of their machinery due to sudden jerky movements in the steering. 1. Unenclosed cabs in harsh weather. In the early days of tractors, open-air tractors were common. While these cabs offered minimal protection from the elements, they were extremely uncomfortable during long hours. Drivers endured direct exposure to sun, rain, snow, and cold winds, and the discomfort and lack of protection made operating these machines unpleasant. Tractor operators worked in inclement weather and were at risk of dehydration, frostbite, sunstroke, and more. Furthermore, exposure to rain and snow increased the likelihood of slipping off the tractor. By the 50s, many manufacturers began offering enclosed cabins, and these cabs were designed to provide operators with climate control and better protection from the elements. This design revolutionized tractor operation, allowing farmers to work longer hours with little risk of extreme weather exposure. Today, modern tractors are almost always equipped with air-conditioning closed cabs, making them much more comfortable. These 10 tractor features show us how much thought has gone into improving farm safety over the years. The industry has made tremendous strides, and while some designs have come and gone, they serve as important lessons in the ongoing evolution of evolutionary agricultural technology.